In today's video, as I had done in the previous one, I will give you the explanation of this chapter, Lost Spring by Anis Jung. So I will begin with the introduction of the chapter. In this lesson, the writer describes the condition of poor children who have to live in slums and work hard in very dirty conditions. They are never sent to school because their parents are too poor to pay for their education. So, in order to describe their lot, the writer first takes up the case of poor rag pickers who have settled in the Simapuri area of Delhi. Then she takes up the case of the poor bangle makers who have been living for generations in the dingy town of Firozabad. These people have been exploited by all sections of society, and while the elders have learned to live with their lot, the younger generation does have some dreams of their own. They want to get out of their family traditions and live a better life. So, in this lesson, the writer gives us a glimpse into the life of two different communities. Number one, the poor rag pickers who have migrated from Bangladesh and have settled in Simapuri, an area of the periphery of Delhi. And number two, the poor bangle makers who have been living for generations in the town of Firozabad. So first, I will talk about the rag pickers of Simapuri. So the writer sees a boy named Sahib every morning in her neighborhood. The boy looks for some coins or other things in the garbage heaps. So one day the writer talks to the boy. She comes to know that these people have migrated from Bangladesh. Their fields and homes were swept away by storms, and they had nothing to eat. So they came to the big city and started living there. The writer told Sahib that he should go to school. So Sahib said that there were no school in their neighborhood. There were a number of rag pickers like Sahib. In a few months, the writer came to recognize each one of them. They were all barefoot boys. With some people, it is a tradition to go barefoot. Perhaps they use it as an excuse to conceal their poverty. In order to know more about these rag pickers, the writer visits Simapuri, which is a place on the periphery of Delhi. Those who live here migrated from Bangladesh in 1971. And Sahib's family is among them. Simapuri was then a wilderness, but now it is a home of 10,000 rag pickers, and they live in structures of mud with roofs of tin and tarpaulin. They have no sewage, drainage, or running water. They have lived here for more than 30 years without an identity. But they have ration cards that get their names on voters list. Ration cards enable them to buy grain also. Food is more important than an identity. The writer sees a group of women in tattered saris, and she asks them why they left their beautiful land of green fields and rivers. The women say that if they can feed their families and go to bed without an aching stomach, they would rather live here than in the fields that gave them no grain. So whenever they find food, they pitch their tents and start living in them. Children grow up in them, becoming partners in survival. And survival in Simapuri means rag picking. Garbage to them is gold, and it is their daily bread. It gives them a roof over their heads, even if it is a leaking roof, but for a child it is even more. Sahib tells the writer that sometimes he finds a rupee or even a 10 rupee note in the garbage. So for children, garbage becomes something wrapped in wonder, but for the elders, it is a means of survival. One winter morning, the writer sees Sahib standing by the gate of a club. He was watching two young men dressed in white playing tennis. Sahib says that he likes this game, and he is wearing tennis shoes with a hole in one of them, but that does not bother Sahib. For one who has walked barefoot, even shoes with a hole is a dream come true, but the game he's watching is out of his reach. Then, one morning, the writer sees Sahib going to a milk booth, and he has in his hand a steel canister, as he now works in a tea stall, and he is paid 800 rupees and given all his meals. The writer sees that Sahib has lost the carefree look of his face. The steel canister seems heavier than the plastic bag he used to carry over his shoulder. The bag was his, and the canister belongs to the man who owns the tea stall. Sahib is no longer his own master. So that was the story of Sahib, who is a rag picker of Simapuri. Now we will move on to the next story, which is the bangle makers of Firozabad. The writer meets a boy named Mukesh in Firozabad. Mukesh belongs to a family of bangle makers, but he wants to be his own master, as he says that he will be a motor mechanic. His dream looks like a mirage in the dusty streets of Firozabad. The town is famous for its bangles, and every other family here is engaged in making bangles. And it is the center of India's glass blowing industry. Families living here have spent generations working around furnaces, wielding glass and making bangles. Mukesh's family is among them. So about 20,000 children work in these glass furnaces. Their parents don't know that it is illegal for children to work in high temperatures in dingy cells without air and light. Children work in these hot furnaces all day long, often losing the brightness of their eyes. Mukesh gladly offers to take the writer to his home, which he proudly says is being rebuilt. They go through stinking lanes that are full of garbage. They go past homes that have crumbling walls, wobbly doors, and no windows. They are crowded with families of humans and animals. Mukesh stops at the door of one such house and pushes it open. It is a half-built shack. In one part of it, there is a firewood stove. A frail young woman is cooking the evening meal for the whole family, and she is the wife of Mukesh's elder brother. So when Mukesh's father enters, she brings her veil closer to her face. He is a poor bangle maker, and despite long years of hard labor, the old man has failed to give his house a proper shape, and he has failed to send his two sons to school. All he has been able to do is teach them the art of making bangles. He himself has become blind from the dust in the polishing of bangles. Mukesh's grandmother says that it is his karam, his destiny. Born in the caste of bangle makers, they have seen nothing but bangles all their life. In the house, in the yard, in every other house, every other yard, every street in Firozabad. In dark huts, boys and girls sit with their fathers and mothers. In the flames of oil lamps, they wield pieces of colored glass into circles of bangles. Their eyes are more adjusted to the dark than to the light outside. So they lose their eyesight even before they become adults. In another hut, the writer sees a young girl named Savita. She is in a draped pink dress. An elderly woman sits alongside her, and they are soldering pieces of glass. Savita's hands move mechanically like the tongs of a machine, and at present she hardly knows that the bangles she is making are symbols of an Indian woman's suhag. The old woman beside her became a suhagin many years ago and still have bangles on her wrist. But there is no light in her eyes. Her voice is drained of all joy. She says that she has not enjoyed even one full meal all her life. Her husband is an old man with a flowing beard, and he says that he knows nothing except bangles. But he feels some consolation in saying that he has made a house for his family to live in, and he has at least a roof over his head. The writer says with a sense of pain that the cry of poverty rings in every home in Firozabad. Little has changed with time. Years of toil have killed all their initiative and the ability to dream. The writer asks them why they don't organize themselves into a cooperative. To this, they say that the police crushes all their efforts and they are beaten and put in jail on the charge of doing illegal acts. They are caught in the vicious circle of sahukars, middlemen, policemen, bureaucrats, and politicians. The poor bangle makers have come to accept their fate as something natural. To do anything else would mean to dare. So the writer is happy that Mukesh has dared to break away from this vicious circle and he has decided to be a motor mechanic. He says that he will go to a garage and learn the job. Though the garage is a long way from home, he says that he will walk all that distance to fulfill his dreams. So that was the story of Mukesh from Firozabad. Now we have come to the end of the session, and I hope that it was helpful and you all were able to understand and grasp all the important points, and I expect you all to read the chapter thoroughly.